281, Readings. Part 13. Prayer and Meditation. All of the reading of 281. 13. You will give, in a clear, concise, understandable manner, just how an individual may meditate or pray without the effort disturbing the mental or physical body. First, it would be well to analyze that difference that is not always understood between meditation and prayer. As it has been defined in an illustrated manner by the great teacher, prayer is the making of one's conscious self more in attune with the spiritual forces that may manifest in a material world and is ordinarily given as a cooperative experience of many individuals when all are asked to come in one accord and one mind. Or, as was illustrated by, be not as the Pharisees, who love to be seen of men, who make long dissertation or prayer to be heard of men. They immediately have their reward in the physical mental mind. Be rather as he that entered the temple and not so much as lifting his eyes, smote his breast and said, God be merciful to me a sinner. Which man was justified, this manner he that stood to be seen of men and thanked God he was not as other men, that he paid his tithes, that he did the services required in the temple, that he stood in awe of no one, he was not even as this heathen who in an uncouth manner, not with washed hands, not with shaven face attempted to reach the throne of grace. Here we have drawn for us a comparison in prayer. That which may be the pouring out of the personality of the individual or a group who enter in for the purpose of either outward show to be seen of men. Or that enter in the closet of one's inner self and pours out self that the inner man may be filled with the Spirit of the Father in his merciful kindness to men. Now draw the comparisons for meditation. Meditation, then, is prayer, but is prayer from within the inner self and partakes not only of the physical inner man, but the soul that is aroused by the spirit of man from within. Well, that we consider this from individual interpretation as well as from group interpretation. Or individual meditation and group meditation. There are definite conditions that arise from within the inner man when an individual enters into true or deep meditation. A physical condition happens, a physical activity takes place. Acting through what? Through the imaginative or the impulsive. And the sources of impulse are aroused by the shutting out of thought pertaining to activities or attributes of the carnal forces of man. That is true whether we are considering it from the group standpoint or the individual. Then, changes naturally take place when there is the arousing of that stimuli within the individual that has within it the seat of the soul's dwelling, within the individual body of the entity or man, and then this partakes of the individuality rather than the personality. Mark means a spiritual benchmark of the highest order the soul is trying to achieve. I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Press on to the mark that is set in him. For he or she that endures unto the end shall receive that crown, that mark wherein each recognize themselves to be set apart for a purpose in his name. The mark of the Lamb, or the mark of the Christ, or the mark of the Holy One, or the mark of the Son. Scars, rather than the mark, so that only an imperfect image may be raised within themselves. Through the power of the Christ in me, I can, and will, do that he would have me do. Trusting only in him I will press on, to the mark of the calling whereunto he has called and does call me. Having the mark of the beast and the mark of the Lamb becomes the difference between the consciousness of the indwelling presence of the Christ and the hoped for yet not seen or known. If there has been set the mark meaning here the image that is raised by the individual in its imaginative and impulse force, such that it takes the form of the ideal the individual is holding as its standard to be raised to, within the individual as well as to all forces and powers that are magnified or to be magnified in the world from without, then the individual, or the image, bears the mark of the Lamb, or the Christ, or the Holy One, or the Son, or any of the names we may have given to that which enables the individual to enter through it into the very presence of the creative force from within itself. See Some have so overshadowed themselves by abuses of the mental attributes of the body as to make scars rather than the mark, so that only an imperfect image may be raised within themselves that may rise no higher than the arousing of the carnal desires within the individual body. We are speaking individually. We haven't raised it to where it may be disseminated. For remember, it rises from the glands known in the body as the leiden, or to the leiden, and through the reproductive forces themselves, which are the very essence of life itself within an individual. See. These functionings never reach that position or place that they do not continue to secrete that which makes for virility to an individual physical body. Now we are speaking of conditions from without and from within. The spirit and the soul is within its encasement or its temple within the body of the individual. See. With the arousing then of this image, it rises along that which is known as the Appian way, or the pineal center, to the base of the brain, that it may be disseminated to those centers that give activity to the whole of the mental and physical being. It rises then to the hidden eye in the center of the brain system, or is felt in the forefront of the head, or in the place just above the real face or bridge of nose. See. Do not be confused by the terms that we are necessarily using to give the exact location of the activities of these conditions within the individuals, that we may make this clarified for individuals. When an individual then enters into deep meditation, it has been found throughout the ages that self-preparation is necessary. To some it is necessary that the body be cleansed with pure water, that certain types of breathing are taken, that there may be an even balance in the whole of the respiratory system, that the circulation becomes normal in its flow through the body, that certain or definite odors produce those conditions that stimulate the activity of portions of the system, that the more carnal or more material sources are laid aside, or that the whole of the body is purified, so that the purity of thought as it rises has less to work against in its dissemination of that it brings to the whole of the system, and its rising through the whole of these centers, stations or places along the body. These are conducive or produces an outcome. As are also certain incantations, as a drone of certain sounds, as the tolling of certain tones, bells, cymbals, drums, or various kinds of skins. Though we may as higher thought individuals find some fault with those called savages, they produce or arouse or bring within themselves. Just as we have known, do know, that there may be raised through the battle cry, there may be raised through the using of certain words or things, the passion or the thirst for destructive forces. Just the same may there be raised, not sedative to these, but a cleansing of the body. Consecrate yourselves this day that ye may on the morrow present yourselves before the Lord that he may speak through you. Is not amiss. So, to all there may be given. Find that which is to yourself the more certain way to your consciousness of purifying body and mind, before ye attempt to enter into the meditation as to raise the image of that through which ye are seeking to know the will or the activity of the creative forces. For ye are raising in meditation actual creation taking place within the inner self. When one has found that which to self cleanses the body, whether from the keeping away from certain foods or from certain associations, either man or woman, or from those thoughts and activities that would hinder that which is to be raised from finding its full measure of expression in the inner man, or inner individual, man or woman, meaning in this sense those radial senses from which, or centers from which all the physical organs, the mental organs, receive their stimuli for activity. We readily see how, then, in meditation, when one has so purified self, that healing of every kind and nature may be disseminated on the wings of thought that are so much a thing and so little considered by the tongue that speaks without taking into consideration what may be the end thereof. Now, when one has cleansed self, in whatever manner it may be, there may be no fear that it will become so overpowering that it will cause any physical or mental disorder. It is without the cleansing that entering any such finds any type or form of disaster, or of pain, or of any disease of any nature. It is when the thoughts, then, or when the cleansings of group meditations are conflicting, that such meditations call on the higher forces raised within self for manifestations, and bring those conditions that either draw one closer to another, or make for that which shadows much in the experiences of others. Hence short group meditations with a central thought around some individual idea, or either in words, incantations, or by following the speech of one's sincere inabilities, efforts or desires to raise a cooperative activity in the minds, would be the better. Then, as one formula. Not the only one, to be sure. For an individual that would enter into meditation for self, for others. Cleanse the body with pure water. Sit or lie in an easy position, without binding garments about the body. Breathe in through the right nostril 3 times, and exhale through the mouth. Breathe in 3 times through the left nostril and exhale through the right. Then, either with the aid of a low music, or the incantation of that which carries self deeper. Deeper. To the seeing, feeling, experiencing of that image in the creative forces of love, enter into the Holy of Holies. As self feels or experiences the raising of this, see it disseminated through the inner eye, not the carnal eye, to that which will bring the greater understanding and meeting every condition in the experience of the body. Then listen to the music that is made as each center of thine own body responds to that new creative force, that little by little this entering in, will enable self to renew all that is necessary. In him. First, cleanse the room. Cleanse the body. Cleanse the surroundings, in thought, in act. Approach not the inner man or the inner self with a grudge or an unkind thought held against any man. Or do so to thine own undoing sooner or later. Prayer and meditation. Prayer is the concerted effort of the physical consciousness to become attuned to the consciousness of the Creator, either collectively or individually. Meditation is emptying self of all that hinders the creative forces from rising along the natural channels of the physical man to be disseminated through those centers and sources that create the activities of the physical, the mental, the spiritual man. Properly done must make one stronger mentally, physically, for has it not been given? He went in the strength of that meat received for many days. Was it not given by him who has shown us the way, I have had meat that ye know not of? As we give out, so does the whole of man. Physically and mentally become depleted, yet in entering into the silence in meditation, with a clean hand, a clean body, a clean mind, we may receive that strength and power that fits each individual, each soul, for a greater activity in this material world. Be not afraid, it is I. Be sure it is him we worship that we raise in our inner selves for the dissemination, for, as he gave, ye must eat of my body, ye must drink of my blood. Raising then in the inner self that image of the Christ, love of the God consciousness, is making the body so cleansed as to be barred against all powers that would in any manner hinder. Be thou clean, in him. On November 19, 1932 Edgar Cayce gave reading 281-3 on how an individual might meditate or pray without the effort disturbing the mental or physical body, and sent it to Mr. 256. On the 30th of November 1932 Edgar Cayce's letter to Mr. 256, knowing you have experienced some unpleasant physical reaction from your attempts at meditation, and that I was not competent to answer as you deserved to be answered, I felt there was only one source to which I might go for an answer that would in all probability be more satisfactory to you, and also to me, than any other. I have waited to do this. Now, since getting the information, I have been trying to digest it, although we asked for it in detail, and in very simple words, and I am sure it is all there. It seems that we have, so long associated this, that or the other ritualistic program with certain groups or individuals that have not been wholly in accord with our way of thinking, until we have builded in our mental selves barriers which the higher sources do not recognize. That the information give has a great deal of Oriental color should not be surprising to us when we consider that as a whole we in America are practical, while we say of them that they are visionary, mystic and impractical, yet we know all force and power emanates from one source. That there are in the material world elements outside of ourselves conducive to definite changes within the active forces of our beings is not denied by anyone. Then, that these may be turned toward those things which would induce us to be more spiritual-minded should not be questioned either, and we should not and must not let ourselves become upset at such suggestions. Many times, as I have read over this information, I have felt that it might be better for me to try and explain it to you, rather than sending the entire dissertation as it was given. More and more I am persuaded, however, that since you 256 were first and foremost in my mind when the information was sought from the higher sources, you are the one to interpret it to me. That it is necessary for the first and foremost requirement to be the image of that which represents to us the saving grace in this world of ours, raised through the physical organisms of our beings, is the most satisfying thing of all. I am believing, then, as I have said above, you will be able to not only get that required for your understanding, but will interpret it to me in such a way that I will be able to give it out to our friends, associates and loved ones, so as to make prayer and meditation mean more in our lives and experiences than ever in the past. So, we will be waiting for the next letter from you. On the 14th of January 1933, Mr. 256 wrote, "The reading on meditation and prayer was most interesting to me. My thought is that there are so many things to learn regarding the relationship between the spiritual, physical, and mental, that the suggestions contained therein should be accepted as a means of achieving that fuller expression of the inner self necessary for the development of the individual understanding. The physical shell is difficult to submerge because of our material activities, and the spiritual within does not actively control without special outward preparation or cleansing, it would seem. I have read that the spiritual being reacts to such activity as certain sounds, certain odors, and symbolic ceremony. We think of odors as being fragrant or pleasing to the senses, but apparently the vibrations of certain odors have a certain reaction or effect on the inner self. The same is apparently true in respect to sound vibrations, as certain sounds, vocal or instrumental, either result in a cleansing or counteracting of other surrounding vibrations, or have a direct influence on the physical, to submerge, or the spiritual, to manifest, I know not which. If we were more familiar with or could determine the nature of existence on the spiritual plane, we might better determine the things in this plane that would best influence the spiritual, or be more pleasing thereto, or strengthen the influence thereof. There is so much that could be determined in respect to the effect on the individual of color, sound, odor, surrounding conditions, foods, thought, etc., all vibrations of different manifestation. Let each in your study of these, as in relation to the centers themselves, consider the effect of the color itself upon thine own body, as ye attempt to apply same by either concentration, dedication or meditating upon these. For as has been given, color is but vibration. Vibration is movement. Movement is activity of a positive and negative force. Is the activity of self as in relationship to these then positive? Please interpret the experience I had on Friday night, May 29th, in which I saw colors and heard a voice speak within me. Much might be given as to colors, as to voice, as to the experience that came to thee. As has been given, these experiences come as warnings, as strength, as might, as power, that ye may be comforted in those experiences that at times would overwhelm thee and make thee doubt even thine own self. Know, then, that the lights, the voice, are as the power of the Christ in thine life, attuning thee that thou may be a greater help, a greater blessing to others, at the same time encouraging thee, lifting thee up to a more perfect knowledge of the glories of the Lord, as he worketh in and through thee. The lights are as the Spirit of truth. The voice as the oneness with him, that must be maintained if thy strength would maintain thee. One that finds the activities into the soul influence of others as a realm in which the spiritual side of self may develop the greater, for the entity is a sensitive, or capable, through its inner dwelling, of attuning self to those realms where not only color vibrations make for the indications of the spiritual associations of those about the entity, but where odors may oft tell those periods of transition or impressions, as to the direction in which those may be led, that the entity would aid. For what meaneth a name? John, Jane, Peter, Andrew, Bartholomew, Thaddeus, Rhoda, Hannah. All of these have not only the attunement of vibration but of color, harmony, and all those relative relationships as one to another. Then, as has been asked and has been indicated in another portion of Revelation, all those that bear the mark, those that have the name, those that have the stone. These are representatives then of the same experience and the various phases of an individual experience for its activity.